Got the sun behind me here. What's up, everybody? We're live here. Maybe I can get the sun. Yeah, the sun behind the sun. Chronicles right here. And yesterday we had an interesting, very interesting question come up that had to do with crystals and the Bible, right? In the chat room, someone, of course, most of this has to do with religious programming out there. Someone suggested, which I've heard many times in the past, that crystals and people that work with crystals is all new age mumbo jumbo. Now, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of new age mumbo jumbo out there, but doing metalworking and metalworking combined with gemstones is nothing new age about that. I'm one of those Renaissance men, old souls, if you want to say. And I mean, this goes back so far. Thracians, the oldest civilizations on the planet that we know about. What's up, Chloe? And in fact, one of the questions in the chat room or one of the comments were, where in the Bible does it mention crystals? Well, all throughout the Bible, it does mention crystals, if you want to get into it. Also, go to Patreon, patreon.com/the mystical spiral. You could sign up for as low as $2 a month. I just put an article up today about this with some illustration as well. So first, we'll talk about the way the Bible describes certain heavenly things. They use crystal metaphors when describing New Jerusalem, right? As shiny as crystal. So when they want to read, obviously crystals are God's creation. All of nature is created by crystals, right? And in fact, the Bible suggests that they use crystals to be more in tune with God's will. Wow, what a statement, right? How am I coming to that conclusion? Well, it basically has this, right? So one of the high priests in the Bible is Aaron. And everybody, reminder, we now have super chats back. I am back remonetized here. Back have super chats, even 99-cent super stickers, 99-cent donations. They all help keep my websites and my channels up and running, where I give tons of free information. There's a free information website that I have, themysticalspiral.com. Contact me if you want to become a supporter of my work as well privately, and we can put you on my website and on the new colleagues page. I have colleagues page that I work with doing research, and we're going to do a colleagues page with people that want to support my work in research and websites. And they will get monthly gift packages as well. Yeah, so Aaron in the Bible, he had to wear a specific breastplate. He was the high priest, and specific 12 gemstones. I don't recall all of the gemstones. I have to look it up. But he had a breastplate made of gold or some sort of metallurgy, and encased, right, were these sort of square-like cabochons, how they describe it, right, of 12 gemstones lined up in rows of 4 or 3, right? So inside that breastplate, there were specific 2 stones called, they were called, I have it on my Patreon. It's like Urim and Thummim, I think is the names. Urim and Thummim, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. One of them is spelled like Urim, and the other one is like Thum. maybe double M's, I am or something. It's like Thummim or something. But you guys can look it up. It were two specific stones, right? This Urim and Thummim that were encased in the breastplate of Aaron, and those specific stones, because there were 12 altogether, but two of them specifically were encased for Aaron to be able to understand the voice of God and God's will more. So that's incredible. That's incredible. Right? So if that doesn't go to tell you, in fact, I would go to say that crystals, gemstones were more valuable thousands of years ago than they are now. This dog is running across the street. Little hot dog. Why is it always the smallest dogs that are the loudest? It's like really like humans are too. Like the smallest dudes are the ones that start the fights. It's the same way with dogs. The smallest dogs are always the yappers and the ones that start the fights. And then they run away and let the big dogs finish it. What happened? Somebody took their like away. I had 2 likes, now that somebody took it away. Oh well. But yeah, so, and the description I know of New Jerusalem, they're using crystal metaphors to describe the heavenly New Jerusalem that's going to arrive. So, and that breastplate of Aaron, that's a perfect example of ancient metallurgy combined with gemstones. And this had to be worn by the high priest. And so that's in the Bible. I mean, it's all over the ancient world. All over the ancient world. Outside of the Bible as well. I mean, you have so many artifacts of it as well. So to say it's New Age is really just a bunch of religious programming and mumbo jumbo. So that's why I responded in the chat room when the person was like, oh, this guy's just spitting out New Age stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I guess some people would think that if they weren't in the know, but crystals have been around as long as the planet, like millions and millions and millions of years. And I would say they were more important thousands of years ago because people, I think on a bigger scale, people understood their capabilities and the applications better. Right? So now today's we're using them in all sorts of computers and watches, and I mean, like I said, it's piezoelectric. You can look up the short. I did one of my shorts where I have a good example of me rubbing quartz together and showing the electric currents that arise from that. And when something generates a current, you could tap into that current, put thought forms into it, put frequencies into it. Now, how do you think they do ELF? And even like when the Russians were experimenting with what they called Project Woodpecker in the 1970s, I think, early 1970s, mid 1970s, they were using crystal oscillators to squeeze the quartz and then beaming ELF waves across the energy grid on the planet. Right? We'll put people in, depending on the frequency you're putting out there, could put people in a lull state, like their experiment was, and they kept Russia like in a in a little bubble where they were unaffected by the frequency. But this was a known experiment that they did. And back in the day, you used to be able to go to Radio Shack and buy these crystal oscillators, right? And they squeeze cord. They were cheap too. You can get them for like $30 or whatever. And they squeeze the quartz where you could beam frequencies from that. So that was part of their experiment. They were probably using, I think, a crystal, a high version of a crystal oscillator type. Yeah, we have crystals even in our pineal gland. Right? So I would say for sure, when you ask about crystals being in the Bible, I mean, come on. Incredible how Aaron had to wear that breastplate. The high priest had to wear the breastplate. Even like look up the Thracians and the Egyptians, the Mitanni. Right? One of the most famous artifacts in the world is King Tutankhamun's alien dagger, space dagger. Why do they call it a space dagger? It's because it's literally made out of meteoric iron, right? And it has a gold handle, and it's double-edged, inlaid with jewels, encrusted with jewels. And most likely it was given to King Tut's grandfather, Amenhotep III, which is Akhenaten's father. Akhenaten is Amenhotep IV. Changed his name to Akhenaten, but Akhenaten's father, Amenhotep III, one of the most important pharaohs ever. His father, Thutmose, was the first one to intermarry with the Mitanni, right, which were North Syrian tribe that spoke almost pure and wrote in almost pure Sanskrit, right? And we have the records of this, right? And we have like even the Amarna letters where the Mitanni king is writing letters to Amenhotep III, because Thutmose was the first. I think it was Thutmose II. I think he was the first one to intermarry with northern Syrian Mitanni. Right, these are Asura tribes. Right, Asura tribes of ancient Vedic Asura devas. Right, the Brahmins and the Kshatriya tribes. Well, one of the Asura tribes were the Mitanni. They were these chariot warriors, and they were making freaking daggers out of meteoric iron, right? And with gold handles and encrusted with jewels. And some of them were large men as well, right? Very large men, part of the Nephilim tribes, right? Well, the Mitanni, their royalty, they were at war with Egypt at one time, right? They ruled for centuries in some of those areas, northern Syria and those areas, the Levant, right? But they were at war with Egypt for a while, and then they started to intermarry with Egyptian solar kings, right? Where they were sending Mitanni princesses to marry into the pharaoh line of the solar dynasties of Egypt. Right, so the first one to intermarry with the Mitanni princess was Thutmose II. And Thutmose II, he was the father to Amenhotep III, and the grandfather to Akhenaten, and the great-great-grandfather to Tutankhamun. So when they started to intermarry with these northern Syrian tribes of the Mitanni, they were constantly given gifts and sending letters of correspondence and sending Mitanni women, both slaves and also princesses, to marry into royalty. So Thutmose II took a few wives from the Mitanni, and then his son Amenhotep III, which is Akhenaten's father, he took some wives of the Mitanni. And it's controversial, but Akhenaten might be the product of a Mitanni princess, which is from North Syria, and his Egyptian father. So that's pretty incredible, right? And in the letters, the Amarna letters, Amenhotep III, which is Tutankhamun's now grandfather, he was given a gift by the Mitanni that talks about a special double-edged dagger. And eventually that ended up in his grandson's tomb, in my opinion, which is the one that we call today the space dagger. And, and that would be passed down in the pharaoh line. So you can look it up, and most likely it was a Mitanni gift, that space dagger. Really incredible. So, all of this crystal and gemstones and metallurgy, I mean, it's as ancient as we are, right? And blacksmiths and stoneworks, cutters and all of that, they were held sacred back in the day. This is the Sun Behind the Sun Chronicles, and Spiral out.